Baltimore Ravens joint practice with the Commanders is in the books. Defense dominated as usual. Plenty to discuss here on the Locked On Ravens Squad show.
Rise and shine. It's the Ravens Squad. Everything Baltimore Ravens every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Charm City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Flock together and squad up. The Ravens Squad show starts now.
What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Ravens Squad show. This is Sammy Joku. Joined as always with Kevin Oestreicher. Q is not in today, but still plenty to discuss on today's episode. Want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by KALSHI. For a limited time, download the KALSHI app and use code Locked On to get $10 when you trade $10. Lots to get to in this episode. As we mentioned, the Ravens had their joint practice with the Commanders. Lots to get to on that. Lamar Jackson talked about our boy Jacoby Lane in a very positive light. So we'll talk about that for sure. And we'll talk about who must step up in this final preseason game. The Commanders are in Baltimore for this last game. And then it's cut time as we get set for the regular season versus the Indianapolis Colts. So we are less than 3 weeks away, guys. We're almost there. The actual real football. Let's get into the joint practice because that is the story of the day. The Ravens hosted the Commanders for that practice. Lots of interesting clips if you're on social media. The Ravens dominated, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Kevin, what are your first thoughts when you heard about what went down in practice today?
Yeah, I mean, I was very excited, just kind of getting the developments and going through I said this on Lock the Ravens PM. It felt like in the recap that Ryan Mink and Quentin Corporal had on BaltimoreRavens.com, felt like just under the defensive notes, it was just the entire Ravens defensive roster. Like, just felt like everybody was making, like, from the stars to the depth to the backup guys, like everybody was getting involved in the action. And look, I think that, having the joint practices that they did against Minnesota defensively, which again were great, and then to come back against the Commanders and do it again is a really big deal, especially considering that Jesse Minter's defense has given up just 10 points total in 2 games. Like, everything feels like it's clicking. And this is the real opportunity, or the real last opportunity for the starters to get any sort of run before the regular season begins. Obviously it's going to be a different dynamic on Friday when you're talking about the preseason game where it's going to be, a lot of second, third, fourth stringers competing for roster spots, not, hey, let's get better each. And, of course it's always about getting better, but these are guys fighting for their roster lives at that point. And I think that not that those guys weren't also a focus during today's practice, like Ethan Burke throwing guys down on special teams. Like, we got those reports and everything, but it honestly made me feel a lot more confident in, where they are, because it's a much better barometer, in my opinion, as opposed to just regular practice. You're going up against another team. They're trying, because it's not like you're not trying when you're practicing against your own team, but there is that certain level of like, hey, I don't like, there's almost like a level of caution, I feel like, in doing that, where you're still going all out. Don't get me, you're not like not trying, but in these joint practices, like it's 100 all the time. You're just going full speed ahead. And I think that, just there's context to it too, right? Like, I get it where the Commanders didn't have 3 of their starting linemen, Afe Owe and K'Lavon Chaisson didn't practice, but you play who's in front of you, and you know what? They should have looked dominant in that case, and they did. So, that to me was a really good positive defensively for them. And while the offense still is clearly behind the defense in terms of, everything that's going on, I'm still really happy with how this practice went, because I wanted to just see the offense be better than it was against Minnesota, which it was, and the defense keep stepping up, and that's what happened.
That's definitely what happened. And I'm with you. Yes, the offense is behind the defense a little bit, which we'll get into, but the defense continues to dominate. You left this to you. Last year was just insane in terms of what we're accustomed to seeing from this team, the talent that is clearly on this roster. I mean, besides the addition of Trey Hendrickson and Hawkins, there really isn't much change to this defense. But for whatever reason, this defense has taken almost a 180 in terms of, I won't say production because the games haven't started yet, but you can clearly see there's been a shift in Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver. I want to make sure I include Anthony Weaver in that discussion because he has done wonders, it seems, for this defensive front. Obviously, the addition of Trey Hendrickson is no short thing. It isn't something to like look past. But I'm very impressed with what's going on with the defense. Obviously, the Commanders with, Jayden Daniels isn't a bad quarterback. So they hear this success that is going on with this defense when you're going up against a quarterback like Jayden Daniels. Last week, we talked about how, the Vikings got Kyler Murray and J.J. McCarthy, not two great quarterbacks in the grand scheme of things. Here, we got Jayden Daniels, who was Offensive Rookie of the Year, could be in line for a big third season if everything goes well, if he stays healthy, and the Ravens defense continues to show out. So I'm very impressed by what they're doing. How happy are you? Well, how confident are you that this defensive showing can push over to the regular season? Jesse Minter, first-time head coach. He's called plays before, so I'm not really sure why there's this question mark with him outside of Baltimore. But it seems outside of Baltimore, people are talking about first-time head coach. Is going to be difficult for him to kind of get his legs from under him. Maybe a little bit of a mistake for the Ravens in some regards to move away from John Harbaugh. But how confident are you, seeing as how they're only giving up 10 points the last 2 preseason games and continuing to dominate in these joint practices? How confident are you that this defense continuing to show out throughout the regular season?
No, I mean, I'm very confident. I don't really buy a lot of that stuff. I think that's just kind of the natural speak around a first-time head coach coming in with competitive teams. I don't think that's specifically like what's going on with Jesse Minter. I do think sometimes, you bring in a guy that isn't ready or you see a lot of potential in, but there's a very low floor, high ceiling. Jesse Minter is a high floor, high ceiling coach for this Baltimore Ravens team. And look, I'm not saying there won't be growing pains here and there. I certainly think that there will be at times, and that's very natural to happen. It's the same thing with Declan Doyle being a first-time play caller. That's more the risk to me. If you're talking about any specific part of this being a risk, that's more the risk to me than, Jesse Minter being a first-time head coach. I mean, he's been familiar with the organization. He won a national championship at Michigan. He is very ready, and he was one of the top head coaching candidates in this cycle. And, what would the conversation have been if he went somewhere else as a head coach? Would it still be the same thing? Or is it just because Lamar Jackson is in Baltimore and all this different stuff that people are trying to talk down? I mean, all this different stuff that we could say about it. But yeah, I think there are 2 joint practice sessions, 3 total practices with the Vikings and the Commanders, 2 preseason games so far. I mean, he's showing you different disguises. He's showing you different things. And again, I'm just like, this is the preseason. What are we about to see in the regular season? Like, what is this man about to pull out of his playbook that we are just going to be like, draw on the floor? Like, what in the world did we just watch Jesse Minter do? I mean, I think that the players are really excited to be playing under Jesse Minter. And again, like, we kind of joke about it probably once every couple of weeks, Sam, but like, I've heard nothing negative at all about Jesse Minter from, around the Ravens, right? The same thing with Declan Doyle. Everything feels like the honeymoon phase right now. And, honeymoon phases can last a long time. They can last a short amount of time. Hopefully this one lasts through February and they can, just ride the wave into a Super Bowl championship. But no, there's no doubt or question in my mind that Jesse Minter was an absolute home run hire for this Ravens team. The staff he put around his guys also was home run all the way around. So I don't buy that it was a mistake moving on from Harbaugh. I mean, that's all just a bunch of people who either like Harbaugh a lot or just don't like change. And like, I don't like change either personally, but at the same time, like, sometimes it has to happen. And in this situation, it did absolutely have to happen. And change can be scary. Change can be a lot of different things. But I mean, you have to kind of, if you want to achieve greatness and what you're doing isn't working, sometimes you have to make those necessary changes. And I'm glad that Steve Bisciotti and the Ravens realized that it was time to make a change and going away from, again, the comfortability of John Harbaugh, because they always had a cushion with John. It was okay. Most years they're going to be in the playoff hunt and contention, but you're trying to reach that next level. I think moving on from Harbaugh and getting Jesse Minter was, I think, the right call.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there could be no doubt. Again, if you're not in Baltimore, if you're not hearing what's going on in the castle, maybe you've, grown to respect Harbaugh after all these years, like 18 plus years in the same team with the success he has. Sure, there's going to be some trepidation about whether or not the Ravens can duplicate or even exceed their level of success over the last few years with the new head coach who has not been a head coach in the past. But man, all signs are pointing upwards with this defense, especially. And Jesse Minter plays no small part in that resurgence on the defensive side of the ball. Let's get into the offensive side of the ball, because the offense played better. At least that's what seems to be reported in this joint practice against the Commanders, more so than they've done the last 3 practices. And I include one practice being the preseason game against the Vikings. In that regard, the offense struggled a little bit in the Vikings joint practice, including the preseason game. In this joint practice, it seems as though the Ravens are a little bit more consistent. Lamar Jackson a little more accurate in his passes. But the O-line continues to be the topic of discussion. Roger Rosengarten, based on the report, I don't know who the actual reporter was, but said that Roger Rosengarten was on the ground twice. You hate for offensive linemen to be on the ground, let alone the right tackle to be on the ground twice. So there's still a little bit of growing pains with the offensive line. Look, we know this offensive line is going to be better than last season, but not too sure that fans aren't a little concerned. In fact, I think I see one from Mind Strength here talking about how the worry again is with the offensive line. What are your concerns with the offensive line, Kevin? Are you a little more concerned with this O-line than you were when Vingo Nwani was first drafted? Or are you still going to take a little bit of a ease approach to it as this team is still getting acclimated to Declan Doyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that based off the 2 preseason games, I feel a little more concerned about the depth than I did coming into the preseason. I just, Emory Jones has had 2 not so great games. You lose Danny Pinter, who could have been key depth. I'm not really sure they keep 3 centers anyway, but if they did, he would have been key depth. I'm not really sure how that roster situation would have gone if they didn't keep 3 centers, but regardless, we don't think about it anymore. Unfortunately, though, the situation that we don't think about it anymore is a pretty brutal one. So again, shout out to Danny Pinter. Hopefully he's able to recover quickly from that. But, I also think that, like Carson Vincent has had some bad moments. Andrew Voorhees has been on the ground a lot in these preseason games. At least there was one. There's one play in particular that sticks out to me where he just was like flown around. And, I'm not even sure he makes the roster at this point anymore. Like, I was hoping that Dwayne Ledford could maybe, kind of rejuvenate Andrew Voorhees into a pretty good player there, but I just don't think it's there right now with Voorhees, and he clearly was not a good player last year. So I don't know. You still have more options than you did last season, and obviously you're not starting Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees, so like the bar is literally on the floor in terms of like what you need to be better than last season. But at the same time, it still probably is the biggest concern heading into the season for the Ravens. It's not as big as it was last year, but it still certainly is one. And what I've said about the O-line unit is just put together a middling unit. It doesn't have to be a top 10 unit. It doesn't have to be a top 5 unit. Just put together, if they are the 16th best offensive line in the league this upcoming season, I will take it, because you have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry. It's not, like, I'd love for Lamar and Derrick Henry to play behind the top offensive line in the league. They'd win the Super Bowl if they did that. But I do think that, without having to ask Lamar to do too much with, Superman powers or anything along those lines, same thing with Derrick Henry. They were just asked to do way too much of that last season. And I think that because of the offensive line they have fielded, we're going to see better years overall from Lamar and Derrick Henry. Maybe you want to factor in Derrick's age a little bit, but Derrick Henry just does not, like, age is not a thing to Derrick Henry. So, you could tell me with those numbers, Derrick Henry was 25 years old, and I say, yep, I checks out. I believe you. But I do think that the offensive line is a decent concern point, but luckily not as big as it was last year.
Oh yeah, this is not the same situation as last season. I mean, we know that this team is going to be better on that side of the ball, especially that unit, than last season. But to your point, yeah, Andrew Voorhees hasn't looked great. He played a large chunk of the game, and in fact, both game 1 and game 2 hasn't looked good at all. Again, we were expecting maybe Dwayne Ledford kind of build him up to be a little more than what he showed last year. Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Again, he gets one more game to kind of push that narrative aside. But right now, it seems as though Andrew Voorhees is who we think he is, and he was starting at left guard all season last year. But tells you what type of unit we're dealing with here as opposed to in previous seasons. My concern is still with the new philosophy, the new scheme with an offensive line that isn't great. Again, Lamar Jackson, as is everyone on that side of the ball, is still learning this new system. And when Lamar Jackson now under center more play action passes, he's not staring at the defense all of the time like he was when he was predominantly in shotgun or in those pistol formations, where he can look at the defenses. He makes a decision whether or not to carry the ball or toss it, hand it off to Derrick Henry, what have you. Now he's really counting on his offensive line to have his back as he turns his back to the defense for those few seconds as he has the play materialize. I'm hoping that this offensive line can get it together. Again, we know not a lot of Ronnie Stanley. Haven't seen him at all in preseason action. Same with Rosengarten. Same with John Simpson. It's been more of Vengo Wane and whoever that center is going to be between Devon Gwynn and Ethan Posick. So I say let it play out. First game might not be great for the against the Colts as far as continuity is concerned and meshing, but as you get towards the rest of the season, the rest of the year, I think this offensive line will gel. But of course, right now it doesn't look too hot. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Ravens more on the offensive side of the ball. This time about a guy I think we all know, Jacoby Lane, how he looked in practice today, what Lamar Jackson had to say about him, and how this offense looked at the whole in terms of the pass catches. A lot to get to here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. All right. Before season even kicks off, everyone's making prediction. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On KALSHI, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. Can the Baltimore Ravens make the postseason? Right now, in fact, can the Baltimore Ravens win the AFC Championship this season? Baltimore is currently trading at 14%, meaning a $100 trade will pay out $725.02. I mean, that is pretty spectacular right now. If you're a Ravens fan and you believe that the Ravens can go all the way, that's something to think about. On KALSHI, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house, and as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position, trade the draft pick, the game, and more on KALSHI. Download the KALSHI app and use code LOCKEDON to get $10 when you trade $10. KALSHI. KALSHI. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risks and may not be suitable for all investors. KALSHI products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. This episode is brought to you by Square. Behind so many of the local businesses people visit every day is Square, a platform designed to help businesses sell, manage, and grow. Whether it's a neighborhood coffee shop, a packed sports bar on game day, or your favorite restaurant, Square brings payments, banking, and more together in one connected system. It helps business owners spend less time managing technology and more time focusing on their customers. Square isn't just a payment processor. It's a complete business platform built to simplify their day-to-day. From accepting every major payment method to managing inventory and helping businesses access their earnings faster, Square gives owners the tools they need to run their businesses with confidence. It's the little things that matter to me, like when a restaurant is slammed, but the staff never looks stressed or even checkout is faster no matter how busy it gets. You're not waiting around. Nothing feels chaotic, and it just feels organized. That kind of experience usually comes from having Square, keeping everything connected in the background. If you're starting a business or running one that deserves better tools, Square helps you sell, manage, and grow without slowing down. Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/lockedonnfl. That's SQUARE.com/GO/LockedOnNFL. Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today. We are back with the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Again, we're here twice a week, Wednesdays, and after every single Ravens game. The upcoming game is on Friday, so we'll be there after the game to talk about what goes down in that last game of the preseason. You can also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast twice a day, 6 a.m. through 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're aware whenever his shows drop. You can also catch him on Locked On Ravens Hits, which is new platform for him, a new YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe to that as well, where you'll get daily takes from him regarding the Baltimore Ravens as well. So again, plenty of Ravens content coming your way as we are inching closer and closer to the regular season. It is merely a few weeks away. Now, let's talk about the Ravens again with the offense. We talked about the offensive line in the first segment, but the pass catchers have been the story of camp, most notably Jacoby Lane. I know you talked about this on your 6 p.m. show, Kevin, but Jacoby Lane had a few clips over on social media. A couple didn't quite go his way. He did have a pretty good game as far, pretty good practice according to a lot of reporters. But I want to get your thoughts on his separation skills. That's been a major talking point for a lot of people who are not too optimistic about whether or not he can equate what he does during practice on the football field during the regular season. What are your thoughts seeing that he struggled a little bit and a little bit of a contact in the red zone? Are you a little concerned now about Jacoby Lane? Or are you taking those two clips and thinking about, just a negative time for him in those instances?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I'm not reading too much into it. I mean, look, there are still some things Jacoby has to work out. I think that all the hype has, it's been great for Jacoby. Obviously, he's shown a lot over the last couple of weeks, but I do think there's still some stuff he has to work on. But I still it doesn't mean he can't be an impactful player from week 1 on. But I do think that the hype and the expectation around Jacoby Lane has bumped up kind of. If something goes wrong, all of a sudden, like the sky is falling. Like he has these two balls fall incomplete, or he doesn't get the separation or doesn't get physical enough or whatever, and all of a sudden, it just becomes like a what's wrong with Jacoby? Like what happened? And we have to remember, like, he is still a rookie. There are things that he is going to be able to do in the future, and he'll like look back on now, for example, and be like, man, I couldn't do this nearly as well as I could 2-3 years ago, but now maybe he's one of the best in the league at it. But Jacoby can separate. He's not Rashad Bateman level. He's not Zay Flowers level of a separator. He's a different skill set. And, he'll have to learn to work with the physicality of the NFL and all of that. But, this is kind of the point I made on the 6 p.m. show. It's just kind of like with the expectations around Jacoby right now. I mean, I think he's going to have an impact from week 1 and beyond. But what happens if he doesn't? What happens if he catches like 10 balls for 120 yards in the first 4 weeks of the season? And, he's having like 1 or 2 catches a game. Everyone's going to be like, what happened to Jacoby? What is he washed? I'm like, no, he's a rookie. Like, he's a rookie. So I'm not worried about it. Not every play can be I mean, Jacoby was getting close to every play being a highlight play, but unfortunately the reality is not every play can be a highlight play. There will be some struggles with certain things, especially for a rookie. This man was in street clothes as a 3rd-round pick midway through the second quarter, his second ever preseason game. Like, I don't think have you ever seen something like that before, no. Sam? Like, that's ridiculous. I also have never seen something like that ever. And this is the Ravens, by the way, who have been the laughingstock of the league at wide receiver for who knows how long. They feel so good and so confident, as does, I think, the rest of the league, considering he's been the NFL darling throughout the entire offseason, that, he's able to do that. So, yeah, it was a couple of tough reps that were put on video. He also had a couple of nice catches in this practice, by the way, that were reported. So, it's give and take with this whole thing. But, no, I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I'm not concerned either. Like you mentioned, he's a rookie. This is again, his skill set does not require him to be blowing past defenders. Again, he's not Randy Moss. He's not. Yes, Randy Moss had the catchability. He was a high flyer, and he could speed by guys. That's not what Jacoby Lane's game is, but he doesn't have to have that game. His ability to be able to catch the ball wherever is something that Lamar Jackson has not had. In fact, we can go his way back to Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco only had that for a few seasons with Anquan Bolden. And you know what happened when he got a guy like Anquan Bolden. Have a quarterback having a receiver that can catch the ball, no matter the circumstance, is invaluable. I mean, I'm looking at that clip and seeing the types of coverage that was against Jacoby Lane. Those are one of the knocks on Jacoby Lane. Can he beat press? Can he be that guy in the red zone whenever you get physical? His lanky frame does not equate to having that type of strength to get off of a defender like that. And that will come with time. He's going to get bigger. We saw Trent Simpson in his 4th season. Now he's, getting a little stockier. This is going to take time. We expect too much from these rookies. Is he going to be an all-world beater? Who knows? We hope so. But what we do know is that he has the skill set necessary to push a guy like Tez Walker, who we thought would be that 3rd wide receiver, and kind of make it a little more challenging. Not to say that Tez Walker is not going to get an opportunity to be a wide receiver 3. He may not be vying for some snaps alongside Jacoby Lane, but Jacoby Lane to be in the conversation when this guy was just drafted 4 months ago is a testament to his skill set. So I'm all about the Jacoby Lane hype train. I'm on it as well. But let's be okay with him making a few mistakes or not being able to make every single catch that comes his way. He's a rookie. He's going to learn, and still, even with that, he had a pretty remarkable practice, as you mentioned, Kevin. Let's talk about Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson was asked about Jacoby Lane, and Jacoby Lane I guess Lamar Jackson endorsed him pretty well. I think he kind of doubled down on his approach. He's been talking pretty well about Jacoby Lane throughout the entire offseason. And he mentioned that he could pretty much catch the ball with the best of them. DeAndre Hopkins came to mind. Odell Beckham Jr. comes to mind. Two guys that he's had in the past, not for a very long time, about a season apiece. But, I mean, Jacoby Lane could probably, in my opinion, be even better than those guys, even though, those guys had spectacular careers in their primes. They weren't in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson has a guy who can help grow into a special receiver potentially. What are your thoughts when you hear about, Lamar Jackson giving him his seal of approval? Does that make you think that Jacoby Lane could be in for the long run? Maybe get a little more snaps than maybe even we anticipated up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Baltimore already has a pretty clear plan in mind. And I mean, it feels like Lamar already trusts Jacoby a lot. And, there's a lot of not only the hype that's going around with Jacoby, but, you're seeing Lamar like trying to get a feel for who Jacoby is as a player, right? Throwing the ball up, seeing how high he can go, essentially is kind of what the feeling's been like. It seems like throughout training camp. And, that's where you need to be able to do that, right? It's over the course of a season. Can you establish chemistry? But where does that start? It starts in training camp. And especially when you're a rookie in a new offensive system and everybody's in a new offensive system with Declan Doyle, it is just a matter of, finding guys who can win for you in certain situations. And, what Lamar is seeing, I feel like with Jacoby, is the fact that he can throw that ball up in the air, just throw it, you just go, boop, and Jacoby is going to come down with that thing. And that's a big point of trust and emphasis, because if Jacoby wasn't showing that in training camp, Lamar wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. And I feel like we're going to see a lot of that early on. I think Lamar might just spam it because he's like, man, this is fun. I've been able to do this over the course of my career. Like, this is fun. Let me keep going. Like, this is something that's new to me. But again, it's the complementary side of it for Jacoby, where Lamar knows he has guys that can separate and, work back to him for the football, work in the short and intermediate game really effectively and all that. Not that Jacoby can't do that, but like he has the ability to, big 3rd and 8, get to the sideline and come down with the football. And, like with the DeAndre Hopkins and the Odoo Beckhams of the world, like obviously they're known for their flashy one-handed catches and some of the craziness that they've had that way over the course of their careers. But like I talked about on the 6 p.m. show, they're also known for like, and how many catches, like it wasn't a lot because they didn't play them a lot, but like a lot of D-Hop's catches last year came in like big 3rd down situations, it felt like, or just big situations where they needed a guy to just catch the football. And if Lamar is saying that that's what that Jacoby reminds him of, I mean, I'd be feeling myself if I were Jacoby. That is some great praise. And, I think it's been really fun to see his ascension this offseason.
Me too. I'm enjoying it. I know there's a chance it could all kind of bite us in the butt if this doesn't go the way we wanted to. A lot of fans are pessimistic, and I get it. There's been receivers in the past that have shown up in preseason and haven't really come to play in the regular season. This feels different, though. I don't know why this feels so different. This feels like a different circumstance. Maybe it's the new coach. Maybe if John Harbaugh was here, we'd be a little bit less optimistic about the situation, and a little more pessimistic about what we're seeing. A lot of says, Jacoby Lane, but it just feels like this guy has everything that the Ravens need to kind of push it forward. I know a lot of people are comparing Jacoby Lane to Isaiah Likely and what he did on the football field, but I see even greater potential for him outside of that. Just being a wideout, being able to play certain positions on the football field that, Isaiah Likely just couldn't. Makes me feel pretty good about what Jacoby Lane can do. Again, we'll see what happens. Week 1 is approaching. I'll be surprised if he even plays much, if at all, in this 3rd preseason game. That's how confident I am that the Ravens have their mind set with this guy. I think this 3rd preseason game is going to be about who will be on the football team and who doesn't. Those guys who are on the bubble, who can make a name for themselves. Maybe the coaches want these guys to show out for other, football teams. This is going to be this is what I call the job making interview process for a lot of these guys. Which one of these guys can come in and win themselves a job? That's what this 3rd preseason game is going to be about. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about who those guys will be, who needs to step up the most, who's at the bubble. We'll get Kevin's thoughts about who he thinks could be a Baltimore Raven, who could be on their way out. A lot to get to here next. No Locked On Ravens Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. There are live events, more live events than ever worth seeing right now. Games, concerts, comedy shows, festivals, lots and lots of things going on. The hard part usually is in deciding what you want to attend. It's actually getting the tickets between long wait times, confusing checkout processes, and surprising fees. Buying tickets can sometimes feel harder than it should. That's why so many fans are turning to Gametime. The app is built to make buying tickets simple with upfront pricing, seat views before you buy, and exclusive saving opportunities that help you get to the events you want without the usual hassle. There's just something different about being there live, man. I'm telling you, whether it's the crowd reaction, the energy in the building, or a moment that everyone experiences together, it's one of those things that doesn't fully translate through a screen. If you've been to a Baltimore Ravens game, especially those nighttime games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The atmosphere, this doesn't equate on the screen. You got to be there live, and that's what Gametime offers you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. We are back with the Locked On Ravens squad show, feeling pretty good about the Ravens joint practice with the Commanders. And I got to tell you, the defense has been showing out week after week. This just made me feel at ease. This is the last time, really, the ones will be playing any type of meaningful football, be it practice with another football team or preseason until the regular season. We know the ones are going to play in the preseason finale against the Commanders. This is the last time those ones will see meaningful snaps until week 1 against the Colts. So I'm feeling pretty good about the defense. The offense, we'll see what happens. It can surprise us. I think the defense has been, I want to say showing more, but we know that Declan Dole is keeping a lot in his chest, a lot in the vest. He's holding out his cards until week 1 when he can show out and prove that he's a top-tier play caller. So I'm looking forward to it. But right now, I'm really excited about the defense, and that's why we're going to start with the defense. The defense may be already set. We know who the starters are. Everyone's been playing exceptional football. I don't understand it. It might be a harder decision than we think for Jesse Mitchell, considering everyone is playing at all cylinders. Give me your thoughts, Kevin. Which player needs to step up? Which player you think has what it takes to make the roster, but needs to take that extra step to make it on the roster?
It's not because he hasn't played well, because this guy certainly has played well, but I'm going to go with Joe Fagnano here because I think he does have what it takes to make the roster, but I'm just not sure the Ravens want to keep 3 quarterbacks, even with these 2 awesome preseason games from Fagnano. Now, the issue is that if cut down day was tomorrow and there were only 2 preseason games, I'm pretty sure Joe Fagnano would not make it through waivers. So, and if he has even just on par game to what he's had, if not better, maybe even a little worse, doesn't even matter, I think teams would want to take a flyer on him. So Joe Fagnano does have everything it takes to make this roster. They signed Huntley to the extension. That conversation about, cutting Huntley wouldn't even make sense for the Ravens because they'd lose money in doing so. I mean, that would be a next year conversation, if anything. But there are going to be some tough decisions that this Ravens team has to make. Fagnano's shown a lot of poise. He looks like an NFL quarterback, and it'd be pretty tough to see him go. Not because he's the future of the Ravens in 2 years. I mean, that's Lamar Jackson, right? But still, if he's somebody that can give you solid backup snaps, and maybe Huntley isn't the guy after next season, I don't know. That's a guy that I do feel like has done everything in his power to make this roster, but that one could literally just be a numbers game.
Yeah, you cheated because I said the defense first, but I'm going to let you live with that. We're going to
start. You must have cut out from me when you said defense. My bad. My bad. I didn't hear that part.
We'll do it in the next segment. We'll start with the offense.
Okay.
You brought up a great point about Joe. I think that he is going to be, you got to keep him. I think we're at the point where we're seeing what was going on in Cleveland. Cleveland would love to have Joe Fagnano on the football team, if not just to be a potential backup. He's played better than Shedeur Sanders. He's played better than Tua. He's played better than a lot of these guys. I would put him over a lot of these guys who are backups right now, and he's fighting for the 3rd QB spot. Now, he surprised me a little bit because coming into training camp, his profile didn't really wow me. His arm talent wasn't the best. He doesn't have the arm strength that a lot of these quarterbacks have, which I hate I won't say I hate, but I really don't like to take quarterbacks who don't have the arm strength to get there. Um, but he has been surprising in that regard. The ball's gotten there. Feels to me he has a stronger arm than Tyler Huntley, in my opinion. But his superpower is his ability to process information prior to the snap. His ability to do that has been phenomenal. It's helped him out such a great deal. Again, he's a little older than a lot of these rookie quarterbacks that come in. I can't remember if he's in his mid-20s, 24, 23. He's one of the, he's around there where his age gives him a little bit more experience in this league. So even though he's a rookie, he's not a real rookie, and that kind of helps him in this matchup. So I think he should make the team. I know people are saying he should be QB2. I'm not quite there yet. I want somebody with experience, especially. We saw what happened last year. If Tyler Huntley had played against, some of these other teams that Cooper Rush played for, the Ravens may have been to the playoffs without needing the kick to end the season to decide things. So I think Huntley deserves a chance here. But moving on to next year, cap is going to be a little tighter because you're assuming they're going to extend Lamar Jackson. You're assuming they're going to try and extend guys like Nate Wiggins. This is going to be a very tight cap. And Joe, who we know can come in and run Declan Doyle's offense very well, could be a guy to look at. But again, to your point, if they boot him, I don't know. I think some team will grab him pretty quickly. Let's start with people who you think, no matter what, they had a good run. It's going to be very difficult for them to, maybe it's not anybody on offense. Maybe it's everybody in your opinion has a chance. But maybe there's somebody who you think didn't show enough in these first two games. He's likely out. Maybe even a trade candidate upcoming after this game. Give me a guy who you think could be that. I think I know who you're going to pick.
Yeah, maybe, I feel like Nash should have switched back to defense. Just keep going. I'm kidding. But on the offensive side of the ball there, I think it probably is Andrew Voorhees for me. I don't see a role for him anymore. Now the problem is like he hasn't played well. So it's like, what do you even get? Is it like a conditional 7th? Something along those lines. I mean, that would help. I mean, it'd be, you get something, even if it might be nothing, as opposed to just cutting them out, right? But if a trade does happen, but I think time is up for it. Like, I'd rather keep Diego Pounds, even though he's a tackle, and at least right now, and Voorhees is a guard. But I think you have enough guard options and tackle guard versatility, center guard versatility on your roster. It's unfortunate how Voorhees' career started with the injury. I thought it was a great pick by the Ravens when they made it, but Falele is the one that gets all the news and headlines and flashiness about how poor he played last year. But Andrew Voorhees was also almost in the same category, if not worse than Daniel Falele in some instances. So I had a lot of hope that the Ravens bringing in Dwayne Ledford could maybe help him kind of rejuvenate a little bit in his career, but it doesn't really feel that way.
It doesn't. I think he's gone too. Zimara mentioned maybe we should trade him to the Jags for a reunion. Oh man, I'm not sure if Daniel Falele.
If they want to give a 6th rounder over, you sign me up.
We'll take it. I would love that. But yeah, I think that Voorhees' time is up. There's a lot of offensive linemen that could be on the chopping block. One guy that I have is Corey Bullock, a guy who could have been in line to be center. He was definitely talked about. His versatility gives me an idea that maybe he stays put, but can you keep 2 centers and then a center and a half in Corey Bullock? I'm not sure. There's a lot of good offensive linemen there. Emory Jones is a guy who I would love to play more. I'm not sure if his roster is in jeopardy. His roster spot is in jeopardy, but I think that he would be a guy that I would love to see just play better, to give me some confidence that eventually he could be that backup guard that we need. Because right now I'm very concerned if John Simpson goes down, what will happen to this offensive line? Because Emory Jones has had a couple of poor performances, to say the least. Give me a guy on offense who you expect to play well in this contest. Not Jacoby Lane. I'm not even sure Jacoby Lane plays, but who's the guy who you expect to show up in this contest against the Commanders?
Oh, I'm going to go with assuming that everything checks out health-wise and he's playing and everything, I'm going to go with Adam Randall. Now, again, we'll have to see just kind of what that situation looks like in terms of health and how many snaps he gets if he plays, et cetera, et cetera. It was kind of a surprise he didn't play last week. We're like, oh, what's going on here? And then Jesse Minter clarified a little bit. But, Adam Randall, kind of an underwhelming first preseason game. He had that great touchdown run, which was awesome and kind of what we wanted to see towards the end of the game. But the running game hasn't been great for the Ravens over the last couple, or I guess the only 2 preseason games that the Ravens have played. And hopefully what it would mean if Adam Randall has a good game on Friday is that the offensive line is opening up a ton of rushing lanes. And by proxy, the offensive line also bounces back and has a good game on Friday as well. But, I want to see if they can get him involved a little bit as a wide receiver. I kind of want to see a little bit of that, what he can kind of do in open space and in the open field, first contact stuff. I don't know. I have a feeling about Adam Randall if he's out there.
Yeah, I would love Adam Randall to be that guy as well. I was very high on Adam Randall coming into this camp, and I think, again, some of the issues are with the offensive line, which kind of concerns me a bit about what happens in week 1. But again, lots of guys out. John Simpson is gone as well. I would say I want to see him perform well, and he might perform well. This Commanders defense doesn't bring quite the challenges that the Vikings defense did. Adam Randall didn't play in that game, but I want to see him show out. So I like that. I like that choice. I'm going to go with LaJohntay Wester. I want him to build upon his performance in week 2 against the Vikings. He had a great touchdown there, great route running. He got the DeAndre Hopkins stamp of approval, so I've been waiting to see him kind of perform in that area. I want to see if he's going to actually play some special teams. I think he will. He needs to get some more reps in that regard. But I'm cautiously optimistic about LaJohntay Wester and what he can perform both on the special teams unit and on the offense. But to go back to Adam Randall, I'm a little concerned about the play of the running game for the Ravens this season. But my saving grace with that is that Derrick Henry, he's great running between the tackles and also off tackle. He's mostly good at playing off tackle, which means guys like Ronnie Stanley and guys like Roger Rosengard are going to be the 2 guys. They're going to kind of catapult him to have those big runs, and they didn't have either of those guys during the preseason. So a little bit less concerned. We'll see what happens in week 1 against the Colts. I'm not too concerned about the Colts defensive front, but surprises have happened before. But that's the one problem I'm having with the Adam Randall lack of explosion. And week 2, there was no running backs available. Justice Hill was out, Adam Randall was out, and of course Derrick Henry and Rasheen Ali were out as well. So we'll see what happens. And one last guy before I take it on to the next break. I think Rasheen Ali, if he's not healthy, if he doesn't play, I'm sorry. This might be it for Rasheen Ali. Again, I talked about it before the season started, preseason started. The Bears ran with 3 running backs on offense. Again, I don't know whose idea is it with the roster construction. Is it Jesse Minter? Does Declan Dole get a big say? Eric DeCosta just deciding these are the 53 guys. I'm sure it's going to be a collaborative effort between everyone involved, but that's a chance to go on the run with 3. And if you got to choose between Rasheen Ali, who's been kind of a disappointment, and Adam Randall, who's handpicked by Eric DeCosta, not DeCosta, but Steve Bisciotti, I'm leaning towards Adam Randall. So I think this is going to be a big game for Rasheen Ali if he plays. I'm not sure if he was in practice today. I think he was. He'll get an opportunity.
I think he's been back, yeah.
So he'll get an opportunity. We'll see what happens, but this could be a big game for him. Big game for sure. Lots of guys in the bubble. There's going to be names that we don't expect to get cut that will, because again, this is the Jesse Minter roster. This is not John Harbaugh. I know a lot of guys we've seen come in here and play football haven't been with the Jesse Minter system. So could be a different unit in 2026. We'll find out after this preseason matchup. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the defense. Defense has been predominantly exceptional in this camp, but we'll see if there's a couple of guys who could squeeze their way into the roster. We'll talk about it here next on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Welcome back to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. Sam Njoku, Kevin Oestreicher, letting you know Locked On Ravens is here twice a week, every Wednesday, and after every single Ravens game. The next one up is on Friday, so we'll be here after that Friday game against the Commanders to talk all about the last preseason game and put a bow on this preseason session with Jesse Minter's first ever preseason session as the head coach for the Baltimore Ravens. You can also catch Kevin on the Locked On Ravens podcast twice a day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We'll even have some episodes during the weekend and some bonus episodes if things go down. They usually do. So make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you're aware whenever a show drops. Locked On Ravens Hit is a new YouTube channel. So make sure you like, subscribe to that as well. Lots and lots of takes for Kevin. You'll get that daily throughout the week. So lots of Ravens content coming your way. If you need Ravens content, you'll get more than enough here with Locked On. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Now, talked about the offense, who needs to step up. We're now on the defensive side of the ball. We've talked about the defense pretty much the entirety of this episode. They've been going crazy. I mean, firing off cylinders. Jesse Minter and Anthony Weaver having their way with opposing quarterbacks. Who's the guy who you think could be in line to make their way onto the roster that no one's really expecting?
Man, well, on offense, no, I'm kidding. All right. On the defensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, that no one's expecting. You know, I've been kind of on this for a little bit, and I'm not sure it actually happens, but I mean, why not? Let's just talk about it. I think Kayvon Wallace is a guy that his honestly, look, in the joint practices against Minnesota, he had a pick 6 and a fumble, plus the fumble recovery on that fumble. And I think he's played pretty well in the preseason overall. Nothing super flashy in the preseason, but, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if Baltimore does want to end up keeping 5 safeties. Right now, I have him at 7 corners and 4 safeties for 11 total DBs. But, I mean, I would probably say it still is it's not my expectation that Kayvon Wallace will make this roster. Like, if I was putting together my Final 53 right now, he probably would not be on it. But if he goes out there and has another great preseason game and, you know, does his thing, maybe the Ravens do decide that they move on from Longer Beam and Bilal Kone and decide to keep 5 safeties with Kayvon Wallace in the fold in there. So I think it's an interesting conversation, because I think when you talk about secondary as a whole, you know, people are always very different in terms of how many corners versus how many safeties. But Kayvon Wallace has been somebody that's been pretty sneaky to me, to be honest.
That's a good one. I really do like that pick. But you mentioned they're probably keeping 4 safeties and 7 corners.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start your 7 corners. Give me a sneak peek. Who are you thinking right now will be your 7 corners to make the roster?
So obviously it's Nate, Marlon, Jadobi Awuzie, TJ Tampa, Chandler Rivers, Keon Martin, and then one of Kone and Longerbeam. One of those. So, but that's what I'm saying, where if like Kayvon Wallace comes out and has this like great preseason game on Friday, and, you know, Kone and Longerbeam don't necessarily step up, I wouldn't be surprised if they were to keep Wallace over those 2 guys. I mean, I think the first 6 that I mentioned are complete locks. Like, there's no way any of those guys get cut. It's really that if there is a 7th spot, that 7th spot. And actually, let me quickly look up. Did Kayvon Wallace, can he play slot?
I'm sure he can.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he can. Yeah, I think he can play in it. So maybe, I mean, and look, like, you already have slot guys and, you know, Keon Martin and Chandler Rivers. But hey, versatility does not hurt you. It does not hurt you. But maybe they feel like they need another outside corner, and that's where, you know, the other guys come in.
Well, you know my next question. You got to choose between Bilal Kone and Longerbeam. Who are you picking? I know. Let me hear it.
You know, I thought Longerbeam played really well in the first preseason game. Didn't really flash a ton in the He almost had a pick 6 in the second one, but almost does not count, unfortunately. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is Kone just because it was a higher pick. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty even to me there. I can't really distinguish who I'd rather want to keep. But hey, that's what the third preseason game is for, right? Like, you know, those 2 guys will be fighting for a roster spot. And I do think it probably will come down to those 2 for one. Like, there's no way they keep 8 corners. So it's those 2 for 1 spot. You know, same draft class, both suffered, you know, tough injuries last season in the rookie years, weren't able to play. So it's these end of position roster battles that, like, I really like to dive into, because especially for a team like the Ravens right now, there were really never any starting battles up for grabs outside of center. That was really the only one that you can talk about. You know, if you consider wide receiver 3 a starting spot, maybe that one too. But that was not a competition at the beginning of training camp. I mean, that is turned into one with how Jacoby Lane has played. So I don't know. If I had to pick, I guess I'll just go Kone for now. But
There you go. Love it. Pulling the trigger. I'm with you. I think Kone's the guy as well. That's going to be very interesting, though, man. They got a lot of great options at DB here, and that includes safety. They could really, surprise us here, but I think Kone's kind of eked his way on. But this is going to be a big preseason game for both guys. I think, to your point, they're going to be right there, giving the Ravens an opportunity to make some tough choices. This is going to be a big preseason game for both of those guys. So I like those two options for you as well. Is there any defensive guys who was here last year who you don't expect to make the roster when cuts happen? I know we're talking cuts. I see Zmar saying Sam's already making player cuts. We sure are. Last preseason game, I think the decision's already been made for a lot of these guys. Give me a guy who's on the roster last year who may not make the cut here in 2026.
Well, this might be cheating because actually, let me look up. Did he? No, he did not. Yeah, he did not. He did not play any games for the Ravens last season, but he was technically on the quote unquote roster, and that's Adisa Isaac.
Yeah, you're cheating.
No, that's not cheating. No, that's not cheating. He was on the team. He's not on the actual roster.
Okay. I'll give it to you.
God, no,
I'll give it to you.
Fine. I'll give one more after, but
okay.
Adisa Isaac to me is at the very bottom of the 5th outside linebacker spot competition. Ethan Burke is clearly at the top to me. Came on Rucker, who I think's been pretty good this preseason and training camp. I mean, if it wasn't for Ethan Burke just being like,
unbelievable.
Yeah, literally, like, I don't even know who to compare him to. Like, he's been unbelievable this preseason. So he's somebody that, I guess is like the next Terrell Suggs. He's been that good. He will probably get that roster spot. Adisa Isaac, I don't think is anywhere close to it. In terms of another guy, I'm gonna go. I don't think CJ Okoye makes it.
Ooh,
I don't think CJ Okoye makes it because there's just too many D linemen.
Yeah,
there's too many D linemen. And honestly, I'm not sure John Jenkins makes it.
Yeah,
let's just go through the numbers here. You have 5 D linemen. Let's just do 5 as the round number right now, just the one in the middle. I think 4 is too little, 6 is too many. You would have, assuming Nnamdi Madubuike does not get put on IR, it would be Nnamdi, Travis Jones, Roderick Washington signed his restructured deal with guaranteed money. I don't think he goes anywhere. Calais Campbell and Aeneas Peoples. Those are your 5. So
strong 5.
You could 100%. Yeah. But you could keep 6, and that would probably be John Jenkins. But, where does that leave CJ Okoye? I know Rayshawn Benny wasn't on the roster last season, but, also he's a guy that is impressed and has a connection to Michigan and Jesse Minter. So, they're going to have to cut at least 2 really, really good defensive linemen. It's going to hurt a lot because I wish they could just keep 10 defensive linemen and call it a day. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. But again, I'd rather have them have 9 or 10 defensive linemen that they really love than 4 or 3. Yeah. At least they have the depth there.
Yeah. Brian mentioned Jenkins to practice squad on a handshake deal. That could be something.
We're
going to close out the show with this, and let's talk about the defensive line. I think Peoples makes the team. I think, I wish Q was here to hear us say, I know. He has had a fantastic preseason, and that Vikings game was unbelievable. To have Fub as your 5th defensive lineman. I mean, the back end of your defensive front means you have a stellar interior defensive front. Calais Campbell addition has been fantastic. Nnamdi Madubuike could be back, and that's where I want to take this next. Nnamdi Madubuike hasn't practiced at all on 11-on-11. He's done, individual work, and he's ramping up. Could be ramping up for the start of the regular season. We don't know. They could be kind of playing coy because after this game, camp is over, and the media can't really talk about who's out there. They can kind of push the media aside and get Nnamdi Madubuike ready on his own terms, kind of. Let's say he's not ready for week 1. If he's not ready for week 1, then maybe he's not even ready for week 2. At what point do you consider maybe putting him on IR so you can keep a guy like a Rashawn Benny as another guy? So you're not losing that talent until it's time to get Nnamdi Madubuike fully back. Do you expect them to make a move like that? Or can you see the Ravens saying, hey, we activated you from the PUP list. You're ramping up. You're getting ready to go. You're a fantastic player. Let's get you in here as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, so the problem with IR is that you can't practice.
Yep.
So if you put him on IR and you're trying to ramp him up, it would just have to be a bunch of like workout individual, still obviously with the team, but like you can't be out there on the practice field and until you're designated to return. And obviously you have to miss a minimum of 4 weeks. So I don't know. It kind of feels like they're not going to do that. But like you said, that's one of the only avenues. It's not the only one, but it's, a pretty big one to being able to keep an extra D lineman on the roster. And I do think that with all the talent the Ravens have, there are going to be at least a couple guys that are claimed off of waivers once these guys hit the waiver wire. So, I it's tough because I don't think you're allowed back on the PUP list either once you're activated off of it.
I
So
don't think so.
I mean, they really only have the option to put him on IR and have him miss the 4 weeks minimum and, not have him practice with the team, or you keep him on the active roster, but he's just a healthy scratch, or I guess not healthy, but a scratch until he is ready to play. Now, I don't think you should rush him. Like, he hasn't graduated to the next part of his plan yet. And, he's not doing team drills right now and, 11s and all that. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I would rather just keep him on the active roster, let him be able to practice, and just kind of take a risk somewhere with that. Now, there also was the possibility that he doesn't have to miss the minimum of 4 weeks. Maybe he has to miss 3. Like if he doesn't get put on the IR, my anticipated return date for him, if he doesn't play week 1, would be week 4, because that's them coming back from Brazil. He played the Titans at home. I feel like that would be the ideal return date for him. But again, like it just depends on how he's feeling and the recovery process and, kind of everything that happens there. But my gut feeling is that they do not put him on IR, but just because I said that, they're probably going to do it now. So it's just always how it works.
I'm with you, though. I don't think they put him in IR. It's just a scenario that was brought to my attention. It's a possibility, but I think they keep him. They keep 5. I think Aeneas Peoples is the last guy, and they'll have to make a pretty tough decision with some pretty talented players on the defensive front, which makes this a very important preseason game for those fellas who have a chance to maybe not make it on this team, but definitely other rosters throughout the league that they can make an impact. All right. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Locked On Ravens Squad Show.
Yeah.
Very, very great episode, very jam-packed with knowledge. And we're going to get set for this Friday game because it's the last preseason game. The next time these guys are on the field after that is at Indianapolis for week 1, where the games count for real. So one last stop, and that is at M&T Bank Stadium on Friday for the Commanders game. And we will see you guys after that game to talk all about what should be a pretty exciting matchup. So again, that's going to do it for us here at the Locked On Ravens. For myself and Kevin, thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Ravens Squad Show, and we will see you on Friday.